looking at this bishop here, and the constant words GM opponent, and dangerous bishop on c2, and you can probably guess what I played instead of d6 or f5. I played f5. Now, my ideal scenario that I'd worked out was, if white's going to use the d pawn and let me play en passant like that, then of course I'm going to have a blockade on d5. But the problem with this, it's got a problem strategically. White can undermine c4 with the b3 pawn. Once that c4 pawn goes and white plays c4, white will also be able to play, d4, white will also be able to play c4, and then white will have the constant threat of these two hanging pawns coming in to gain more space with d5, creating a fast transition to a passed central d pawn at any opportunity which black might be the weakest. So these hanging pawns are very dangerous. And so f5, I don't really recommend it. I couldn't find a single game which has had this move before. So even though it apparently has some logic, or had some logic to me, it's statistically it hasn't really been played before. Now, instead of taking on f6, by the way, maybe that was the sharp thing to do. Rybka gives 0.57. He played actually more quietly. Say queen takes f6, d3. Apparently, this is worse for black, and it's obvious that I'm discouraged from castling. If I play something like d5, let's see, bishop g5, it's not very pleasant. Black's still got a lot of pressure on the dark squares. Maybe this is more accurate than what he played, if I dare say so. But he played queen e2. So he's let me play with this strange structure. So attacking c4, the knight's protecting at the moment. I play bishop e7, but now he does this undermining first as a preliminary to playing d4. Just plays b3 to knock out that c4 pawn, to remove my en passant facility. So I take on b3, he takes, and of course he's got some a-file pressure, and he's also got the potential maybe to exchange off my dark square bishops, and he's also got the potential for knight a3 to c4 or knight a3 to b5 if he so wanted. So in the game I thought a5 was an interesting idea here. Rybka mentions it, third move candidate on a certain depth. The idea was just to stop at least b4 from happening, and maybe also to threaten a4 at the right moment. But he plays d4, and we can see we're going to have these dangerous hanging pawns soon. My only slight concession will be being able to use the b4 square. After castles he plays knight a3, and here I played knight d5, basically saying to my opponent, well, give me the b4 square at least if you're going to have these hanging pawns. But now there's the constant threat white has of playing d5, and he's going to make more use of that threat now by putting some more pressure behind that pawn, playing rook d1, an excellent simple preparation move. And here it looks as though black is strategically worse. If black really is faced in this position with this constant threat of d5 to be concerned about. I played actually d5 here to try and relieve some of the pressure, but now I am exposing the e5 square as an outpost square for my opponent now. So we're going to see that transition now. After ed bishop takes, my opponent flicks in the lovely move knight b5, because b5 was weakened even further with my a5 move. So really my position is grim positionally, and this means I don't think it matters how many trees I draw of analysis, I won't be able to save this position. Being strategically inferior and drifting down further and further means less and less resources to consider. So he played bishop b1, tucking away that bishop just in case I had any ideas of snatching it. I could have taken it a move before, but I thought it was okay on b4. In fact, here instead of d5, Rivka does give this as an alternative to d5, but here we're looking at 3 candidate moves with Rivka, all 0.53 for white, so they're all much for muchness apparently. Anyway, so my move d5 was played, so knight b5, bishop b8. He plays now bishop b1, and I thought, well, can I generate something? Can I generate an attack or something out of nowhere? So I played the move queen e8, sneakily trying to play queen h5 if he's going to let me, and then I might have the threat of bishop takes h7, and this might work if I was playing someone like 120 ECF or 130 ECF, or maybe lower. I don't know anyone else though. I think in this position it's starting to drive itself, the position. So my opponent, who's like 227 ECF, I think he's spotted I've got queen h5 as a potential tactical threat, and he squashes that idea. He plays knight e5, and he doesn't mind again losing his e5 outpost square, because it's going to be transformed into another strategic trump card to torture me with, namely d6 control. If the pawn goes to e5 and the rook is eyeing d6 and this pawn is supporting d6, then the time will be ripe for that knight to go to d6. So what I did here was actually play rook a6. I resisted the temptation of a quick knight takes e5. So by playing rook a6, well, that's an interesting awkward move to play. He plays bishop f4, and here I thought, well, why don't I take on e5? And he didn't take with the pawn, he took with the bishop. So he doesn't mind inviting the trade of dark square bishops. What did Rybka think of that move? Rybka actually thought taking the pawns marginally. Oh no, they're about the same actually. 0.47, 0.48, taking the pawn bishop. Okay, but here Rybka seems to like my move bishop d7. I'm not sure. Did I loosen some of my strategic weaknesses, or go further down the road in being more strategically lost? That's the question. With bishop d7, he wins the the dark square bishop rather. But on the other hand, at least this knight, I don't have to stare at that knight anymore. So he plays knight c7, nice snapping off. So now, if we assess this position, he's got a good clamp on the dark squares, a dark square bishop which I can't challenge. On the other side of the coin, I have got a sort of useful knight on b4. I have got away with using f5 to barricade any threats against my king. Unfortunately, king safety is not the only issue in the position. It's this clamping down on the dark squares, this imminent threats of d5, which he's going to toy with me. And also, on top of that, he's going to play his moves very quickly, because once in this strategically comfortable position, with my time ticking away quite rapidly on this very fast time limit, I'm going to be more and more pressure later. Anyway, I play a second move candidate, which Rybka kind of likes, 0.76, but a4 was apparently 0.5. So queen a8. So I have some vague ideas now. b5, and maybe use this bishop on the diagonal one day. Maybe if I support this pawn first with this very crude rook f6 to g6, everything will start coordinating. Be like one of those Kosov positions where the opponent had a seemingly pancake position that sprang to life. So will my opponent allow the pancake to spring to life? I wasn't too sure. After h3, I played rook f6, and my opponent just casually plays bishop f4, and now I get in this b5 move. So I don't mind c takes b, because that would mean I could have a blockade square of his d pawn. He's never going to play c takes b, because also rook b6, and once I recapture that pawn, things are fine. In fact, even Rybka agrees with my assessment here, 0.38. So white wants to maintain, keep hold of these, like the tension of playing d5 here, as well as this lovely dark square bishop.